just said unjustified tariffs on what we build, on what we sell, on how we make a living. He's attacking Canadian families, workers, and businesses, and we cannot let him succeed. And we won't. We won't. The Canadian government has rightly retaliated and is rightly retaliating with our own tariffs that will have maximum impact in the United States and minimum impact here in Canada. And my government will keep our tariffs on until the Americans show us respect.
A very warm welcome. You're watching The Hard Facts. I'm Akanksha. A passenger train in Pakistan carrying around 500 people has been hijacked by insurgents in the restive province of Balochistan. The Balochistan Liberation Army has taken responsibility for this attack, claiming that they have taken 182 out of those 500 passengers as hostages. But what's alarming is that the BLA in its statement has claimed to have killed 20 Pakistani military personnel. According to the BLA's statement, they have released civilians, including women and children, but continue to hold the ISI and ATF personnel as hostage. The separatist group has also threatened to execute all hostages if security forces do not retreat. Viewers, keep in mind that this is a developing story because the Jaffar Express continues to remain hijacked, but today's attack is the latest in a series of attacks, one that's indicative of how the Baloch Liberation Army is growing in strength. And it's not us saying that. According to a January security report by the Islamabad-based think tank Pak Institute of Peace Studies, there have been more than 150 attacks just last year. That's up by a staggering 119% compared to 2023. The organization has in fact gained strength over the past few years. It has enhanced its capability on many fronts, including propaganda, recruitment, target selection, intelligence, and adaptability. Given that the BLA's strength is derived from a majority youth population, including women recruits, what explains the local anger? Is the BLA now a manifestation of Pakistan military's own failure to control insurgency? And for how long can the Pak army resort to brute force to crush successive Baloch insurgencies? Is ignorance towards the long-standing grievances of the Baloch ethnic minority the solution? But let's also tell you what the Balochistan Liberation Army is. The BLA is a separatist outfit fighting for Baloch independence. The BLA operates from safe havens in southern Afghanistan, some even in Iran. BLA has also accused Pakistan of forcefully controlling Balochistan. BLA targets Pakistan forces, civilians, and even the Chinese who are linked to the CPEC projects. It's designated by the United States and Pakistan as a terrorist organization. But this is not the first time that Pakistan forces and Chinese projects have also been targeted in the past. Let me give you a timeline of what's happened in the last 1 year alone. On 3rd of March this year itself, a suicide bomber detonated near the military convoy and one security personnel was killed. Needless to say that suicide bomber was a Baloch bomber, and in February itself this year in Kalat, a Baloch terrorist in fact forced an attack on the frontier corps at the paramilitary unit. Dozens of soldiers were dead during this attack alone. On 5th of January this year alone, there was again a bombing by the Balochis, by a Baloch rebel who killed at least 6 people. In November last year itself, 16th of November, Balochistan again, as far as the entire region is concerned, there was a security checkpoint which was attacked. At least 7 people were killed. And last year in November, in fact 9th of November in Quetta, a suicide bombing took place at a railway station. 26 people were killed. This also included army personnel and the railway staff. In October last year in Karachi, a convoy with Chinese nationals was bombed. At least 2 Chinese were killed during this attack. In November of 2018, Karachi, in fact, a Chinese consulate was stormed and 2 civilians and 2 cops were killed. It's also important to highlight that over 70 people were killed in August last year alone, as they targeted the army installments as well. Now, this insurgency has been a problem for Pakistan since 1948. This is how far it goes. Let me tell you that the annexation in 1948, despite Khan of Khalat's independence declaration, is what in fact led to this entire rift. The Balochis have faced cultural and political suppression since 1948 ever since. Natural resources have been extracted with little benefits to the locals. There was a military crackdown, and forced disappearances of Baloch leaders have in fact become a regular. Poverty and lack of infrastructure, despite the region's strategic importance, is also a dominant factor. China-Pakistan Economic Corridor, the CPEC, is viewed by locals as exploitation of their resources. So we'll now try and answer what is leading to this insurgency, and has today's attack brought the Pakistan army on its knees? Joined in by Mr. Tilak Devashar, who is an author and member of the National Security Advisory Board. Kamar Chima, who is a Pakistani strategic affairs expert. Lieutenant General Satish Dua, who is a former GOC at 15 Corps of the Indian Army. I will also be joined in by Mehran Murray, who is a Baloch activist, in just a bit. Also joined in by Bahut Baloch, who is a senior journalist at Balochistan Post. Bahut, if you could please shed some light on the current situation as far as the hijacking of Jaffar Express is concerned. Many, including Mr. Chima himself, were refuting the information with regards to the killings of the security personnel. He was asking what is the evidence that the claims that are being made by the BLA are in fact not misinformation.
जी देखिए, जैसे कि बीएलए की जानिब से अभी ताज़ा तरीन स्टेटमेंट आया है, उन्होंने फौज के 30 एहलकारों की मारने का दावा किया है।
अच्छा,
तो एविडेंस के हवाले से अगर हम बात करें तो यहाँ पर जो बहुत ही फार फ्लंग एरिया है डाडर का, फिर बोलान में, वहाँ पर ऐसी कुछ भी कोई शहर नहीं है कि आप डायरेक्ट कोई फुटेज वगैरह हासिल कर सके। गो के एज अ जर्नलिस्ट हम भी कोशिश कर रहे हैं कोई फुटेज हमें मिल सके, अभी तक कुछ भी नहीं है। लेकिन जो कुछ सिचुएशन चलता रहा है कि अभी 7 से 8 घंटे हो रहे हैं, उनकी पोजीशन बरकरार है मिलिटेंट्स की, और जो लोग उनके कब्जे में है, जिनको यरगमाल बनाया गया है, वो उसी तरह है। जंग चल रही है। कोयटा जो बड़ा शहर है, वहाँ से अपडेट्स आ रहे हैं कि एम्बुलेंसेस जा रहे हैं, फौज की बहुत बड़ी नफरी जा रही है, जो सूरत हाल को बयान कर रही है कि हालात कशीदा है, इंतहाई कशीदा है, कि वहाँ पर जंग चल रही है। हेलीकॉप्टर्स की परवाजें देखी गई है, ड्रोन वगैरह ये सब, तो इससे आप अंदाज़ा लगा सकते हैं। बाकी फुटेज वगैरह तो कुछ नहीं है, लेकिन जो कुछ इलाकाई जराए कह रहे हैं वो यही बयान कर रहे हैं।
All right, let me quickly bring in Mr. Chima on that note. Mr. Chima, how would you respond to what Bahut Baloch has to say? Because this information clearly indicates that this is an emergency situation which the Pakistani army is currently being faced by.
Well, thank you very much. I think the first thing and the foremost thing is that there is no information, because this is all tribal area. It's very difficult to be in those areas. Normally, you know, Balochistan is 43% of Pakistan, and much of the terrain is like mountainous, and the population is in far-flung areas, so it's very difficult to get to there, one thing. Secondly,
what explains the intense firing then, Mr. Chima?
Well, let me tell you, I think obviously we still have to check that how many militants these are, and how many number they have as hostages. Yet we have yet to have the full picture. since there is no footage, no picture, nothing that has come because the terrain is difficult. And I think the government has reached those places either via the helicopters or air support. So we don't know the exact situation. So as the exact situation comes, we will be in a better position. But I have one thing to talk. These terrorist organizations, they have been fighting the Pakistani state, and they have created a mess inside the region. In my understanding, I think we should have a conversation. How to fight this menace of terrorism in this entire region. And there should be a regional approach. Without the regional approach, because today the entire Indian media is covering what's going on in Pakistan, I think so it means it does affect the Indian society and the Indian people and the India as a state. So there should be obviously a conversation between both the government. There should be conversation in the region for all the countries.
No, I'm going to that is why we are having this discussion today, Mr. Chima, so that we can have that discussion. But before I take that with our Indian panelists as well, let me quickly bring in Mehran Mari, who I see has just joined in. Mehran, what is it that you are learning right now with regards to this entire hijacking that has taken place? Many in Pakistan are still in disbelief with regards to the number of security personnel who have been killed. They're saying that because of the complicated terrain of this entire region, we can't really give out any authentic information that's come out with regards to this hijacking.
In brief, what I'm learning that the Pakistani and Pindi boys have not learned anything after 75 years of occupation. They're still sticking to their old narrative, sticking to their guns, calling the Baloch terrorists, calling Balochistan a very difficult terrain. They have pulled wool over their own eyes for the last 75 years, and they think the problem is going to go away. Balochistan issue is not going to go away. It has to be dealt with. It's an illegal occupation. I know it's like me repeating myself, most Baloch repeating themselves, but you have to open your eyes to the reality, especially the Pakistani Pindi boys to accept the reality. Balochistan is going out of their hand. They should stop resisting something is but natural it will happen. They have tried to deny the reality to themselves. They're not agreeing that Balochistan is an issue, and they've occupied, and then the regional approach and menace of terrorism. This is nice, big slogans by Islamabad, but it's not going to get them anywhere. The issue is Baloch are reacting now. Baloch will take their rights, will take their country back, whether Islamabad likes it or not.
Lieutenant General Satish Dua, as Mehran was saying that, the Balochs are reacting, but I think this is not the first time that they've been reacting. Yes, in the last 1 year, we've seen an uptick in the way the BLA has been consolidating its forces and now growing in strength. I want you to shed light on what's responsible for this kind of growth, of the sudden growth of the BLA, and why is Pakistan failing to control this kind of insurgency, most importantly?
I think you pose a very good question, Akanksha, because firstly, I think this is arguably the first ever train hijack the world is seeing. And what is causing this uptick? I think if in the recent years, what we've seen is that activities picked up after CPEC was gaining ground, because the Baloch feel, apart from the decades of annexation and other issues, but over the last few years, as CPEC and development of Godar port was in progress, they started feeling more and more exploited, and there were more terrorist violence that picking up. You also showed out a timeline where some Chinese engineer or personnel were also killed in one of the terrorist attacks. Then came one Afghanistan came under, when the Americans left and Taliban rules Afghanistan, now they have support from there. Their bases are there in Afghanistan. And also their aspirations got a further boost when Taliban came in power there. So that added to the dimension, and Baloch activities picked up. Then also the fact that the internal troubles, political troubles in Pakistan with PTI and, the political instability there. So that added to it. And I think these are the reasons that we are seeing an uptick, as you call it, in their terrorist activities.
Mr. Devashar, I want to bring you in on this because I think what shook all of Pakistan was perhaps the August 2024 attacks that happened, in which there were over 70 killings that also included unarmed civilians. Of course, military installations were also attacked. Having said that, you look at the way the BLA has been gaining strength, because you're looking at their Majid Brigade, which is of course a very lethal one. It also includes suicide bombers. You're looking at lethality in terms of also the kind of weapons that they are using, including IEDs. How are they arming themselves, and how have they reached this point to now have grown at such a rapid rate? Is it also because of the US pullout from Afghanistan?
I would just add 2 points to what General Dua has mentioned. First, you will recall about a week or 10 days ago, maybe 2 weeks ago, the Baloch had announced that the various groups which are fighting for independence of Balochistan are now going to do coordinated action. Instead of fighting by themselves in pockets, they're going to join forces and carry out operations jointly under a joint command. So I think this is one of the first examples of it being done in a very coordinated manner with all of them. Second, the elephant in the room really is the kind of treatment that the Pakistan Army has meted out to the Baloch. This human rights violations of kill and dump, you pick out missing persons, they go missing, their tortured bodies are found, sometimes not found at all. And that's why you find that civil society in Balochistan for the first time in the last 3 or 4 years has come to the forefront. It was there, they would protest earlier, but it has really become prominent, very prominent in the last 2 to 3 years, and led by women. Balochistan is a very conservative society, but women have had to come out into the forefront because so many of their fathers, brothers and sons are missing. And those who are there, when they protest, they are picked up and their tortured bodies are found. So you have now a very strong civil society movement. In fact, the leader, Dr. Mehrang Baloch, has now been nominated for the Nobel Peace Prize. So young men now in Balochistan feel that if they're going to be picked up and killed, they might as well join the militants, the freedom fighters, and die by killing some Pakistanis to do something for the country.
Right.
So I think these 2 reasons are very important. The various Baloch groups coming together.
There are some very crucial and significant points that you've made. Mr. Chima, how do you respond to that? Because, I'm just pulling out some data out here for you. In fact, 65% of the Baloch population, 15 million of them. So if you look at 65% of these 15 million, they are under the age of 30. And as Mr. Devashar was highlighting, majority of them now that are also being recruited include women. That also, indicates why in 2022, a 31-year-old mother became the first woman to carry out a suicide bombing. And many of them, if I may highlight, which I'm sure you're also aware of, are trained, qualified youth.
Well, this is a very important question, that how young people and women are being recruited, and I think this entire terrorism that is coming from these BLA and Majid Brigade group, they're making women, girls, and children as a shield. This is one thing. Secondly, they're trying to create as image that if they're being subjugated, or if they are under if they're under the state control, there are people in Balochistan, those who are doing the businesses. I think this is an entire war economy. Those people who are picking these weapons, they're being incentivized because they have nothing to do other than just to be the militant. So this entire war economy is that maybe their children are studying somewhere abroad, maybe their relatives are studying somewhere abroad, and they have picked the guns and they are financing their family somewhere abroad. So this is a war economy, and obviously hostile agencies in the region, they have been supporting this insurgency for long. Remember, these may be 4,000, 3,000 people, 2,000, 5,000, maybe those who are hiding in this entire area, and obviously
but Mr. Chima, do you not think that this is also a moment of introspection for Pakistan, who's providing these weapons to them? Many of them are American-make weapons.
No, this is not just the American made, but obviously the Indian deep state is providing them with every kind of financial support as well. So, for example, whenever Indian deep state make a contact in Afghanistan, definitely they're trying to keep Pakistan busy with this low intensity conflict.
Okay, I need to bring in. I need to make an intervention. I need to make an intervention over there. And Lieutenant General Satish Dua, how do you respond to that? That this is a proxy war by the Indian deep state.
I think it's a figment of their imagination to make a statement like that. You see, if they're trying to try to compare this with Kashmir. Now, in Kashmir, Pakistan sends in terrorists. We have proper proof, and they have themselves acknowledged there are terrorist camps across the LOC, and the terrorists are infiltrating from there. We actually catch them with identification. We've actually provided proof over the decades. Balochistan, on the other hand, does not have a contiguous border with our country. They have bases in Afghanistan. They have bases in Iran. Across the borders. So it's very good thing to be able to just say that, okay, Indian deep state. I mean, I really object to Kamar saying this. He and I have interacted on shared space otherwise in various discussions, but I totally reject this. Thank you.
But Mr. Cheema, I'm sure. Mr. Cheema, yeah, sure.
Please
go
come
ahead.
into this. Just 2 points I'd like to make. One, Mr. Cheema describing the Pakistani army, because that's the business. Pakistani army is the biggest business in Pakistan, and they need to come and loot and plunder in Balochistan with their Chinese friends in order to educate their kids abroad and buy houses in Canada and London. So that's not the Baloch. That's the Punjabi generals who do that. Secondly, if Indian deep state was involved, the Baloch would show you a great time. This is Baloch fighting their own war. We wish the Indian deep state gets involved. Then you'll realize what war is. Then the 90,000 in Bangladesh, you'll see 180,000 with their weapons down. Let's listen to what
Mr. Cheema has to say to that. Mr. Cheema.
Yeah. What I have to say, I have a huge respect for General Dua. We have shared space in the past. But what I want to tell you, we still have Indian spy Kulbhushan Yadav with Pakistan. Remember, we got him in Balochistan. We didn't get him from anywhere else. Indian spy Kulbhushan Yadav is in Pakistan. Remember, Prime Minister Modi went to Qatar to get 9 Navy spies, but nobody came from India to get an Indian spy from Pakistan. So 9 Navy spies who got death sentence in Qatar, Narendra Modi Sahab went there and he got it. They got the mercy.
Lieutenant General Dua, how do you respond to that? Mr. Devashar, I know you want to speak, and I'm going to give you 30 seconds.
Yeah.
Okay.
You see, the point is, this insurgency in Balochistan has been happening since 1948. As the point made by Mehran was, the Baloch have not accepted the forcible accession right from 48. They broke out in rebellion in 48, in 60, in 73, right. 77, and for the last 19 years. Haven't Mr. Cheema read his own history?
So, Mr. Cheema, I think since 1948, the world is bearing testimony to how Pakistan brute force, or rather the brute force of the Pakistan army, has led to no solution. Would you not admit to that?
Well, definitely remember, India still doesn't have a solution in Kashmir. India still doesn't have a solution in Manipur. There are cases when
I think we can steer clear from whataboutery, because this discussion for a change is about Balochistan and Pakistan.
No, Dr. Jaishankar very clearly said the solution is you return our stolen part.
Sir, I am trying to give you an example where the Indian audience will understand. If India didn't get a solution in Manipur or the Red Corridor or in Kashmir, so we are also facing such kind of a situation where with such kind of unfinished issues are still.
I want to ask you, Mr. Cheema, how can you even draw that analogy given that Kashmir and Manipur are very much a part of India? There was never an accession.
Part of India as well. Balochistan is a part of Pakistan. There are few hundred people.
Baloch, how would you respond to that? अगर क्या ये comparison आपके viewpoint पे सही है? चाहे वो कश्मीर और मणिपुर की बात की जा रही है, आज बलोचिस्तान से compare किया जाए.
Please read my book.
Yes,
gentlemen, let's also listen into what Bharat has to say. He's been.
नहीं, यहाँ पर देखिए बलूचिस्तान की अगर सूरत-ए-हाल की आप बात करते हैं, यहाँ पर जो मुज़ाहमती तहरीक है 1948 से जारी है, जब पहली दफा पाकिस्तान यहाँ पर बलूचिस्तान पे लश्करकशी करते हैं तो उस वक्त से चीजें चल रही हैं।
बहुत क्या
पर
वहाँ पे
तोड़फी वगैरह
इलेक्शंस फ्री एंड फेयर होते हैं?
नहीं, यहाँ पर एक दोस्त ने कहा कि बिजनेस वगैरह की बात की, तो बलूचिस्तान पार्लियामेंट की जो सूरत हाल है, यहाँ पर ऐसे लोग लाए गए हैं कि वो सिर्फ बिजनेस करना जानते हैं। वो पाकिस्तान फौज की हिमायत याफ्ता है, उनको पैसे दे सकते हैं।
All right, Kamal
जो
Chima, I think I've given you the answer over there. As far as elections are concerned, free and fair elections are not happening. There is no insurgency or separatism currently as far as Kashmir is concerned. I want to quickly bring in, all right, Mr. Chima, I appreciate your presence on my show. So please go ahead, make your point, and then I'd like to bring in Tilak Devashar.
Well, let me, on this question of elections, I think it was the Indian Supreme Court which forced the Indian government to hold the elections in Kashmir. So obviously we have such kind of issues. But in Balochistan, there are always elections, remember.
You know, I just don't know why are we making this about India versus Pakistan, whereas the matter is about a hijacking that's taken place in Balochistan. But Mr. Devashar, I want to bring you in. Is Pakistan also finding itself isolated on an international level? Because remember, if you look at the strikes that took place between Pakistan and Iran last year, which saw a complete diplomatic spat, not just in terms of diplomacy, but also on the on-ground level. At the same time, you already have how Afghanistan is also, providing a safe haven to the BLA. Why is Pakistan not being able to address this matter at an international level?
No, because the serious human rights violations, which are now well documented and known the world over. Everybody knows. You see, in the 70s, nobody knew what was happening in Balochistan. Today, people know what is happening in Balochistan. That's why Dr. Mehrang Baloch has been nominated for the Nobel Peace Prize. Pakistan can no longer push this under the carpet. And it will always get pilloried the world over because of their human rights violations and the fact of Chinese presence. And because the China is pressing them to take even stronger action against the Baloch to be able to protect its own investments. And for these two reasons, you will find that Pakistan does not have any resonance internationally anymore. Even with the US, you see, one day the Pakistani was extremely happy that President Trump praised them because they handed over an ISKP, a member. The next day he imposed or threatened to impose a travel ban, and whole of Pakistan was down in the dumps that, what is this? Kal to ye diya tha aur aaj ye ho gaya. So everybody is looking at Pakistan purely on a transactional matter, that if you can work and do something, it's fine. Otherwise, everybody knows that wherever you see a Pakistani Prime Minister, here he goes, he's going with the begging bowl, asking for money.
All right.
Whether it is to Qatar, whether it is to Saudi Arabia, whether it is the UAE, or whether he's going to China or to the IMF. Everywhere it's the same story. And now the situation is so bad that Pakistani beggars are going to Saudi Arabia, and Saudi Arabia and UAE have issued strong strictures and have warned the Pakistani government that in future, if this happens, we will not allow you the same kind of quotas for Hajj that you have at the moment, because they're going and begging over there.
Mr. Chima, would you like to respond to that? Mr. Chima?
Well, I just want to say, yes. I just want to say one thing. India should support Pakistan in eliminating this menace of terrorism, and Indian deep state should stop supporting these Baloch militant organizations. That's not how this region can grow. And I think we keep on saying Indian deep state because we still have a serving Indian naval officer in shape of Kulbhushan Yadav. Nobody ever came from India to get a spy from
Mr. Devashar,
Pakistan.
how do you respond to these claims that Pakistan has been making for quite some time? Many critics are of the view that this is Pakistan's own denial and failure when it comes to controlling their own domestic fronts. They're perhaps more focused on controlling an Imran Khan than focus on this kind of insurgency. Mr. Devashar, I want to bring you in.
Yeah, you see, it's very well that for Mr. Chima to say regional approach and we should all get together against terrorists. 20 saal, 30 saal आप क्या कर रहे थे कश्मीर में? That time you called them freedom fighters. Today you say, look, get together against terrorists. For everybody else on this panel, except for you, These are Baloch freedom fighters. They're not terrorists. You said the same thing about Kashmir. When we would say they're terrorists, you said, no, they're freedom fighters. I think these are freedom fighters who are fighting for the independence of their country, which was illegally and forcibly annexed in 1948. And they're not going to let. And I would just like to say one more thing. Please read the speech of Gosbaks Bizinjo, which he said in the Kalat State Assembly in 1947, when this issue of accession to Pakistan was being discussed. In 1947, that man said, if it is forcibly annexed, then every Baloch son would give his life for the protection of Baloch independence. Please read that speech.
All right. Mehran Mari, I think I want to give you the time to give your closing thoughts, because let's talk about how deadly and how lethal the entire BLA is now growing in its size. Many are talking about how it's receiving support from TTP, even Afghan Taliban, at a time when the entire army is now growing, whether it comes to weaponry or even suicide bombers. Is it time that Pakistan get their act together and treat this in a more diplomatic fashion than use brute force?
2 points. One, I can see the fear and the paranoia in the Pakistani spokesman over here. He's pleading to India to get help deal with the menace of terrorism. So that just shows on what wicket they're standing. Secondly, always undermining the Baloch, that especially Islamabad has said the Russians are helping them, the Iraqis are helping them, India is helping them, Emirates is helping them, have always tried to undermine the Baloch freedom struggle. Baloch have always fought for their rights, and they will do. And you can see they're going in a positive tangent. Baloch will achieve their goal with help or without help. That's one point. The other thing is Pakistan on the international stage has lost all face, it never had any credibility, but it had durability. It was being used by superpowers. Even a power like China has given up on Pakistan. 20 years they supported the Pakistani lobby, the generals, and funded them to kill the Baloch and to eliminate them. And they realized the Chinese are not secure in Balochistan. They have stopped funding the Pakistani generals.
All right.
It is an end game for Pakistan.
Mr. Chima, I'm sure India would be willing to help Pakistan if Pakistan offers the same help to tackle terrorism in Kashmir. Would you agree or not?
Well, India definitely shall help Pakistan by not giving weapons, money and resources to these Baloch militant organizations, and Pakistan will definitely want the Kashmir issue to be resolved.
All right, so are you today saying that Ajmal Kasab was not a Pakistani terrorist?
Well, what I'm saying is that anyone on this question of Ajmal Kasab, anyone who targets innocent civilians in India, I will call him terrorist, either whoever he or she is. So in this question, what I'm saying is that India should stop supporting the Baloch militant organization, and Pakistan and Kashmir issue must be resolved as per the UN Security Council resolution.
Lieutenant General Dua, closing thoughts on the expectation that India needs to stop this proxy war and that India needs to cooperate with Pakistan. What would you like to say?
My short answer, you help us do that in Kashmir. You stop pushing weapons and terrorists in Kashmir. We will cooperate in every manner as far as fighting terrorism is concerned. Would you do that?
All right. We agree to disagree. Many thanks to you, gentlemen, for joining in.
All right. Scratching each other's backs anyway.
We leave it at that. Many thanks to you, gentlemen, for joining in on the Hard Facts. And with that, up next is the political row over the immigration reform in the parliament. Should security be placed above politics? That's a question we'll be posing to our guests in just a bit. Come right after the break.
In first place, the next Prime Minister of Canada, Mark Carney, with 131,674 votes, resulting in 29,457 allocated points, representing 85.9% of the vote.
My government will put into action our plan to build a stronger economy, to create new trading relationships with reliable trading partners, and to secure our borders. There's someone who's trying to do the opposite. There's someone who's trying to weaken our economy. Yeah. Donald Trump. Donald Trump. And Donald Trump, as we know, has put, as the Prime Minister just said, unjustified tariffs on what we build, on what we sell, on how we make a living. He's attacking Canadian families, workers, and businesses, and we cannot let him succeed. And we won't. We won't. The Canadian government has rightly retaliated and is rightly retaliating with our own tariffs that will have maximum impact in the United States and minimum impact here in Canada. And my government will keep our tariffs on until the Americans show us respect. The Americans want our resources, our water, our land, our country. Think about it. If they succeeded, they would destroy our way of life. In America, health care is a big business. In Canada, it is a right. America is not Canada. And Canada never, ever will be part of America in any way, shape, or form. Look, we didn't ask for this fight. We didn't ask for this fight. But Canadians are always ready when someone else drops the gloves. So the Americans, they should make no mistake, in trade as in hockey, Canada will win. So Donald Trump thinks he can weaken us with his plan to divide and conquer. Pierre Poilievre's plan will leave us divided and ready to be conquered. Because a person who worships at the altar of Donald Trump will kneel before him, not stand up to him. I know that these are dark days. Dark days brought on by a country we can no longer trust. We are getting over the shock, but let us never forget the lessons. We have to look after ourselves, and we have to look out for each other. We need to pull together. When we come together, we build things that last because we are Canada strong. Vive la Canada! Merci tout le monde.
Welcome back. The centre has tabled the Immigration and Foreigners Bill 2025 in the Lok Sabha, proposing an overhaul of India's immigration laws. While introducing the bill, Minister of State for Home Affairs Nityanand Rai said that the law will not restrict anyone from coming to India, but is aimed at boosting national security and replace colonial era laws. The Congress, on the other hand, claims that the bill will give overarching powers to the state to deny entry to foreigners, namely refugees, under the garb of national security, claiming that the legislation violates multiple fundamental rights. The government has countered the charge, claiming robust laws are needed to tackle illegal immigration on multiple fronts, namely crackdown on illegal migration rackets as well. Let's also give you an overview of the new immigration bill. What it proposes is a legislation that aims to end overlapping of multiple regulations. The current legislation is a mashup of multiple laws. That is, the Foreigners Act 1946, the Passport Act of 1920, the Registration of Foreigners Act 1939 and the Immigration Act of 2000. So the proposed legislation is in fact looking at adequate legal powers for the immigration officers. The current legislation also proposes that the Bureau of Immigration will be the one in the jurisdiction of all of this. There will be no explicit clause to deny any entry and even deport illegals. What has now been proposed in the legislation is the codifying denial of entry is on the grounds of security, and the current legislation actually goes on to talk about how the wording is considered as vague and powers are discretionary. The proposed legislation puts the onus on the education and medical institutions to inform authorities, whereas the current legislation in fact talks about a provision that was only recently included where the enforcement is still extremely vague. Now, the proposed legislation also obligates the carriers or the vessels to remove the illegals, and the current legislation, in fact, there is no provision via Immigration Act of 2000. So the question remains, given the threat of illegal immigration, given the turmoil in India's neighborhood, can this crucial reform be above petty politicking surrounding national security? That's the question I'm going to be posing to my guests today. Let me introduce my guests now. On that note, I'm joined in by Ms. Sanju Verma, who's the national spokesperson for the Bharatiya Janata Party, Mr. Charan Singh Sapra, who's the national spokesperson for the Congress Party, Satya Mule, who's a senior lawyer at the Supreme Court, and Mr. Manojit Mandal, who's a political analyst. Mr. Sapra, I want to ask you, when this is a bill that is now looking to pack all these loosely packed colonial era laws, one that is now marked, to only focus on national security, that too at a time when you're seeing how countries all over the globe, including the United States, are now cracking down on the issue of illegal immigrants. Why not let India do that?
See, the Congress party is just proposing, and they are saying that this bill, at the face of it, it looks as if it is potentially restrictive. It contradicts the constitution, and it also violates the fundamental rights. When I am saying it is potentially restrictive, I mean to say that in India, there are so many industries or there are so many companies which require the foreign inflow. Like the foreign expertise is required in many fields, in many industries. So this might restrict this foreign inflow into the country. And further, I would like to say that in this case, I feel there are apprehensions, there are some anomalies, and if the opposition is pointing it out, and what is the opposition saying? We are just demanding that let this bill go to the JPC.
Then Mr. Sapra, why did Mr. Manish Tiwari today on the floor of the House say that this is one bill that is creating greater potential for abuse? I want to know what abuse are you talking about? Secondly, also, why is it being labelled as legislative incompetence?
No, see, why legislative incompetence? That's what we are saying, that Manish Tiwari has quoted so many laws. He has quoted 17(1), he has quoted 19, he has quoted Rule 14 also. He has quoted everything. He has, whatever he has said, he has substantiated with the existing laws of the parliamentary system and existing laws under the constitution.
What's the abuse that you're talking about?
Let this
what
go
abuse?
to the...
What is the potential for abuse?
Look, see, these are see, when there is a wider discussion, Manish Tiwari was not allowed to speak for more than 5 minutes. Had the speaker allowed him to speak for more time, he would have given the detail. That's what we are saying. Let this go to the JPC. There will be a wider discussion, and if there are any anomalies, there are any apprehensions, that can be discussed out. Why the government wants to avoid that? Why the government wants to force these laws like they tried to force the farm law or the lateral entry bill or the data protection bill? They had to go back. And similarly, we feel that in this, whatever anomalies are there, it should be discussed. There's no harm in it.
All right. Now, Sanju Verma, you will have to answer two aspects to this. First of all, Manish Tiwari not being allowed to speak on the floor of the House. And secondly, there are concerns that this is also going to lead to human rights violations. Broad powers are being given to deny entry or detain without any appeal to risk violating these fundamental rights. This is what the critics, including the opposition, are arguing. How do you weigh in on that?
You know, first and foremost, Akanksha, let me make this very clear. Be it a Manish Tiwari or a Shashi Tharoor for that matter, this is basic common sense. You don't need to have the IQ of a rocket scientist to know this. Be it Article 14, 15, Article 19, 21, which are, you know, invoked by the opposition very conveniently at the drop of a hat. These pertain to fundamental rights and liberties of Indian citizens. They do not apply to foreigners. Point number one. Point number two. You said this in your introduction, but for the benefit of your audience, let me reinforce this. Which are the four legislations which the government seeks to abolish? The Passport Entry Act of 1920, the Registration of Foreigners Act of 1939, the Foreigners Act of 1946, and last but not the least, the Immigration Carriers Liability Act of 2000. Let's be very clear, Akanksha. All these four acts which I just spoke of, these pertain to before the Indian Constitution came into effect. They pertain to some of these, 3 out of these 4 acts pertain to even before India attained independence in 1947. So what did Nityanand Rai say? He said the government is not looking to suo moto usurp powers. All that the government seeks to do is that some of these legislations are outdated, date back to pre-constitution coming into effect, pre-independence period, and hence they need to be in sync with times. And tell me one thing, what is wrong if the government says that medical institutions, universities, private residences, educational institutions at large, if they feel that there is something untoward, they need to report a foreigner that they think is not towing the law, let them inform the authorities. So this is not the government usurping powers. This is the government empowering citizens, empowering universities, empowering colleges, empowering private individuals, empowering, medical institutions. Please come forward and share data so that the government can do the needful. But last but not the least,
let's hear what Manoj.
Right. For 20 seconds, please. Bear with me for 20 seconds. I just want to tell one thing. I want to leave your audience with this particular thought. The Indian Penal Code dating back to 1860, the government did away with that, and from July 2024, you had the Bharatiya Nyaya Samhita come into effect. Citizenship Amendment Act of 1955 was replaced by the Citizenship Amendment Act of 2019. The Income Tax Act of 1961 is now going to be replaced by the new Direct Tax Code, which will be far more citizen-friendly. So the limited point I'm making is that outdated laws have no place in a Viksit Bharat, which is what our agenda is by 2047. And if we have to move towards that, we have to get rid of laws which are proving to be like dinosaurs.
Manojit, I want to bring you in because many critics are of the view that this should be a constitutional debate because this will also become a potential tool for the government to clamp down on all those who are dissenters and perhaps looking for an entry into the
Yes, absolutely. I will let me, for the benefit of your viewers, read the Article 14, and which clearly says that my good friend from BJP was definitely misleading. It says the state shall not deny to any person equality before law or equal protection of laws within the territory of India. And the underlined is any person, not Indian citizen. And she has conveniently misled the people of India. And there lies the problem. I think that there should be deliberation on that. that whether any person who is entering even with valid visa passport, like studying in JNU or in my university, right, foreign students. So on the one hand, look at the paradox and hypocrisy, I should be saying. On the one hand, you are having foreign direct investment in education or in insurance right now, and on the other hand, you are restricting entry of these people even with valid visas, saying that suppose there is a crime against them or they are committing crime. If they are committing crime, they will be easily put behind bar.
Okay.
But if they are crime against these people,
Okay.
this
Sanju, I'm going to give you a rebuttal.
Hang on. Please let me. This is very important. Even with valid documents, this bill is saying that these people will not have any recourse to law because they are not Indian citizens. This is, I think, directly infringing upon Article 14, which talks about equality before law of any person, not citizens, I repeat, residing within the territory of India.
Let's hear what Sanju has to say. Okay, Sanju Verma.
Yes. Without beating around the bush, let me just say this to the TMC panelists. I never speak without facts at my disposal. I was not misleading. I repeat, the best example of what fundamental rights are all about. You need to read Article 1 and the preamble of the Constitution, which clearly says this applies to the citizens of India and not simply people who are residing within the territory of India. So please get that nuance correct. And let me say one thing to you, Akanksha. The West Bengal population today is around roughly 10 crore. And this is Mamata Banerjee's own confidant, the so-called mayor of Kolkata, Firhad Hakim. Till about 20 years back, for the last 12, 13 years, it's Mamata Banerjee who's been in power since 2011. The population of Muslims in West Bengal 20 years back was 1.2 crore. Today, the population of Muslims in West Bengal is 3.3 crore. The limited point I'm making is 33% of West Bengal's population constitutes of Muslims, and this is a 175% jump from 1.2 crore to 3.3 crore in barely 2 or 3 decades. And anybody who has an IQ above 50 knows that this is not organic growth.
Okay.
This is inorganic growth of a certain community.
Okay.
How did this happen, Manojit?
Okay, Manojit, I'll give you 30 seconds, but Satya, I really appreciate your patience. I'll have to go to Satya also. He's been awaiting his turn. Manojit, you wanted to come up with a rebuttal, please.
First of all, if you want to check infiltration, illegal immigrants, there are enough laws in this country. And these are being already named.
And this is one such law. This is one such law which will come into effect. What's your problem?
Why are you still misleading?
What's your problem?
I mean,
okay, Satya Mulya, I want to bring you in. Satya, I want to bring you in on the point that the Foreigners Act was already tracking, these people who were looking for a route illegally or perhaps were a threat to national security. So why is, instead of focusing on how this entire bill will be looking to fortify India's national security concerns, now talking about perhaps clamping down on dissenters who want a passage into the country?
Well, what happens is the 4 laws which the Congress spokesperson cited as well as the other panelists cited are pre-independence era, and they are not contemporary. They are not taking care of the technological advancements. They are not taking care of the new kind of security threats that exist. At the same time, the world has progressed. If we take, for example, any country, including any developing country, biometrics is an important part of security data gathering these days. And India still doesn't have any provision in any of these 4 acts for gathering of biometrics of all the immigrants. And it is a must these days, because what happens is without biometrics in place, without data in place, we cannot track overstaying, overjumping of visa duration. We cannot track trespassing of security threat elements from one country to another country. We cannot request from one country to another country demand of people who are wanted as a security threat. Having said all these things, all these 3 to 4 laws require overhaul. And therefore this particular law that is coming into place is definitely something which is a requirement of the time. Apart from this, what happens is the penalties as well as the imprisonment that has been envisaged in the earlier laws are so petty. They are just like 500 rupees penalty for overstaying and 3 months of imprisonment. This is not a deterrent. If there is no deterrent in a law, then that law is not actually serving the purpose for what it is implemented. Therefore, the implementation of new law, which is going to bring in imprisonment for 5 years and 3 years, or fines of up to 5 years, is a welcome move. And it does require, when India has porous borders with Myanmar and Bangladesh, it definitely is very important in context to
Charan Sapra, would you like to respond to that?
Demography of India.
Yeah. See, if like the spokesperson is now alleging that the borders are porous, and like the earlier BJP spokesperson she mentioned, I would like to say that by bringing in these laws, this government is trying to divert the attention from their own failures to stop infiltration.
All right, I think
it is Narendra Modi's government since 11 years. It is Narendra Modi's government since 11 years.
This is also a country which has struggled to put David Coleman Headley to trial.
I'm going to attention and hide their failures.
Okay, I can't. I'll have to leave it at that. I'll have to leave it at that because I'm running short of time. But as I said, this is also a country which is now struggling to bring all the accused of various attacks that India has gone through to put them to trial. But I'm going to leave it at that. Many thanks to you all for joining in on the Hard Facts. And with that, it's a wrap. Thank you so much for watching.
In first place, the next Prime Minister of Canada, Mark Carney, with 131,674 votes, resulting in 29,457 allocated points, representing 85.9% of the vote.
My government will put into action our plan to build a stronger economy, to create new trading relationships with reliable trading partners, and to secure our borders. There's someone who's trying to do the opposite. There's someone who's trying to weaken our economy. Donald Trump. And Donald Trump, as we know, has put, as the Prime Minister just said, unjustified tariffs on what we build, on what we sell, on how we make a living. He's attacking Canadian families, workers, and businesses, and we cannot let him succeed. And we won't. We won't. The Canadian government has rightly retaliated and is rightly retaliating with our own tariffs that will have maximum impact in the United States and minimum impact here in Canada. And my government will keep our tariffs on until the Americans show us respect. The Americans want our resources, our water, our land, our country. Think about it. If they succeeded, they would destroy our way of life. In America, healthcare is a big business. In Canada, it is a right. America is not Canada. And Canada never, ever will be part of America in any way, shape, or form. Look, we didn't ask for this fight. We didn't ask for this fight. But Canadians are always ready when someone else drops the gloves. So the Americans, they should make no mistake, in trade as in hockey, Canada will win. So Donald Trump thinks he can weaken us with his plan to divide and conquer. Pierre Poilievre's plan will leave us divided and ready to be conquered. Because a person who worships at the altar of Donald Trump will kneel before him, not stand up to him. I know that these are dark days. Dark days brought on by a country we can no longer trust. We are getting over the shock, but let us never forget the lessons. We have to look after ourselves, and we have to look out for each other. We need to pull together. When we come together, we build things that last because we are Canada strong. Vive la Canada! Merci tout le monde.
Hello, namaskar. This is First Post and you're watching Vantage with me, Palki Sharma.